Oh boy. Capcom's localization team put out a tweet talking about what their goals were with their process, and everyone hated it. Or some people thought it was fine and just shrugged their shoulders and moved on, while the people that took issue with it were much more willing to let their keyboards be heard. I gave it a read myself, and honestly, it just kinda sounded like business as usual. But people were very clearly mad, so maybe there's more to this than I'm seeing. I'm gonna go over the tweet and see if I can come up with examples of where Capcom has already done some of this stuff throughout the years, and not just recently. Since it's been a few weeks, hopefully I can talk about this without people getting immediately heated. I'm Wes the Explosion, and that's what you can call me regardless of where you're from, though I will also accept cutie pie in your language of choice. What is localization? Embark on a global adventure through the lens of game localization. Beyond mere translation, we're diving into the art of cultural adaptation, preserving context, and inclusive storytelling. Join us as we unravel the intricacies that make games resonate worldwide. That's the basic definition they give to localization. They touch on a few points that are expounded on later, so I won't go into anything yet. This just gives us an overview and starting point. Not just translating. Localization isn't just about translating words, it's about adapting the game for a global audience. Think cultural nuances, idioms, and regional flair. A good localization makes players feel right at home, wherever in the world they are. This is an important distinction to make. Some want a transliteration, changing only the language. Some want a faithful translation. The sentences smoothed out to flow better and make sense in the new language, though the actual meaning is kept the same. And sometimes things are completely changed around because they don't think they'll appeal to foreigners. The biggest example of this is right in my wheelhouse, Rockman becoming Mega Man overseas, because I guess that was more marketable in their eyes. And it wasn't just him, you got the Guns N' Roses name swaps in X5, Blues becomes Proto Man, Forte and Gospel became Bass and Treble, War Rock to Omegasis. Even in Legends 3, they were planning to introduce a new character known as Arrow but call her Saphira in English, though that swap got quashed. Heck, I swear they even went so far as trying to retcon Mega Man's Robo-Boy name from Rock to Mega. Because making a pair of siblings called Mega and Roll doesn't sound stupid at all. I really don't like character name changes. I kinda think if you're called something, you should just be called something. When I used to try to find merch on eBay, I used to fret over whether I should be typing in Mega Man or Rockman, and whether it should be one word or two. Good sellers would make sure you could find it regardless. It just makes it easier to look up a character if they don't have 20 different names. That said, I do kind of understand a change when it comes to titles. That's kind of one of the main ways to get across the point of what you're selling. While Ryusei no Rockman sounds cool, a lot of people aren't going to get that it's a space-themed blue bomber nearly as well as the title Mega Man Star Force will. And don't even get me started on manga and light novels that have long titles. Whenever someone quotes the full thing in the original Japanese and acts like it's something everyone should know, I'm torn on whether to clothesline them or just walk away. So I'm split on this one, but the point stands that there is precedence for it. The importance of context. Lost in translation? Nah, preserving the vibe is key. Jokes, references, and even gameplay elements might need a little cultural remix. It's important to find that sweet spot to make sure players get the intended experience without feeling like something got lost in the process. There's some overlap with the previous point in this. While some prefer translations that are faithful to the original, others will completely want to mold it into the new language. Sometimes that's just a matter of flow, making sure that it makes sense or that it sounds like something that the new audience would actually say. Sometimes it's pulling out references that no one outside of its country of origin would understand, and sometimes it means such a huge switch that you'd think it was actually written by the place that it's being localized for. This one has Ace Attorney written all over it. The main characters have their names completely changed, often to form a pun. Maya goes from loving ramen to hamburgers, and a bunch of dumb American jokes are thrown into the dialogue, like a clown doing a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air parody. Like I said before, I like things pretty close to the original, and would be interested in giving a more faithful translation a look, but at the same time, I can't deny that Ace Attorney starring Phoenix Wright would do a lot better in English-speaking countries than Gyaikuten Saiben Yomi Gaeru Gyaikuten with Ryuichi Naruhodo, and that while I can appreciate the characters enjoying local cuisine, you'd have to explain any Japanese references to me very slowly. While they might be more common these days, I'd say that visual novels were a little more niche back in 2001. And Danganronpa might get away with it, but I'm not sure Ace Attorney could have back then. I understand the desire for authenticity and think things are a little more global now, so that there's less of a need for it, but at the same time, I do have to acknowledge that making things more accessible and appealing probably has saved some series, Ace Attorney chief among them. Bridging the linguistic gap. Each language has its unique structure and cultural context. Our teams work to ensure the narrative and dialogue maintain coherence and emotional impact. It's not just about words, it's about capturing the essence of the story in a way that resonates with the target audience. This one feels like the sort of thing you only notice when it gets screwed up. You get through a game and your bilingual friend, or maybe just a YouTuber, doesn't raise a stink about how they completely butchered the translation, and you're good. And if they do, well... I remember someone playing Fire Emblem Engage, with the text set to English and the vocals to Japanese, and she just kept laughing, saying, "That's not what they said." Capcom has some pretty infamous examples too, though. Remember when Zero supposedly died, only to come back with a, "I hid while trying to repair myself," rather than getting repaired in a similar manner to X? Yeah, people are still making fun of that one. While the actual line is still kind of a flippant rewrite, at the same time, it's so much better than what we got. And the Die Wily, which never happened in the original Japanese version of Mega Man 7. This is so major, this demonstrating that either Mega Man has evolved beyond the laws of robotics, or he hasn't. This is one of the most memorable lines in the franchise, and it never canonically happened. That's pretty messed up. Another thing this makes me think of is the infamous "people die when they are killed" subtitle. People clown on this line because it's such a, yeah, obviously, sort of thing to say, but without watching the anime it was from, I have to imagine the line in Japanese was meant to convey the finality of death. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. If that was the intent though, something like, "when you die, that's it, it's over," might have been more appropriate. There's also X-Dive to consider, where the dialogue reads like it's been passed through Google Translate, and while I can understand what they're trying to say by thinking about it, it gives me a headache. Since this point, while changing the words is also about preserving their meaning, I think it's probably the least objectionable one here. Put your guns on. Character design and development must be culturally sensitive. What may be acceptable in one culture might be offensive in another. Localizers play a crucial role in ensuring that characters are relatable and respectful, avoiding stereotypes or other references that could be perceived as negative in specific cultures. Okay, I read this and can't help but think about the warning message that pops up when you load either of the Battle Network collections. This was another thing that raised the stink. Some people thought that it was them apologizing for something that they didn't need to appease the woke mob, and others said that some of the things in Battle Network weren't okay then and they still weren't okay now. I personally thought that this was the best way to handle things. It keeps the experience authentic while also acknowledging that the early 2000s were a much different time and doesn't try to rewrite history by pretending that certain things never happened. That said, it is kind of a cowardly stance to take, since it's kind of a blanket statement. It'd be like saying, "Listen, I don't know what I did wrong, I just know that you're mad, and I'm sorry." Are they apologizing for the guy in First Class who talks in a stereotypical manner? Their depictions of Native Americans? I think Tomahawk Man's pretty cool, but what about that bit with the voodoo curse? Vidi Narcy? He could be his own tangent. And what's the deal with Land getting immediately kidnapped and robbed as soon as he steps off the plane in America, Europe? They do it again in Battle Network 4. He's safer fighting terrorists in his home country than walking down the street abroad. What are you trying to say about us, filthy gaijin? And Dead Rising is all about America causing the zombie apocalypse due to our lust for hamburgers. I'm trying to keep things light with some of my examples, but I do think some of these would be met with more complaints if it was pointed at another target. I guess what I'm saying is that literally everyone can be kind of discriminated against in this way. For another Mega Man example, there's Oil Man. Black skin with big pink lips, which has been used in the past as a derogatory depiction of black people. That was changed to a more dark bluish tint with yellow lips. And I know what some people are gonna say, I never thought of them that way. If you see this design and draw the parallel, you're the problem. And I'll say back, as someone who once had to explain the issue to a coworker who was visibly upset when another coworker blew up on them after she casually called him boy in what she thought was a friendly conversation, you do not have to buy into the comparison for it to be an insult, and you do not need to be racist to recognize it. I've seen plenty of times where something's needed to be changed or outright removed when one person from outside the country could have just saved it by tapping someone on the shoulder and making a suggestion. If anything, my complaint with this one is that I don't think it should take until the localization phase to sidestep some of these issues. Inclusive language and representation. Localization efforts extend to promoting inclusivity through language and representation. This involves adapting not only the linguistic aspects, but also addressing gender-specific language, cultural norms, and diverse perspectives. The aim is to create an immersive experience where players from different backgrounds can identify with the characters and narrative. This can be very challenging for certain languages due to grammar. I think this is probably where the bulk of the complaints come from. When it comes to just representation in general, that's something that, again, Capcom already does. While I'd call most of them stereotypes, Street Fighter does pull its cast from all over. Battle Network also has a wide variety of nationalities in their series, and you could probably also cite Mega Man 6, which has a set of robot masters where each is from a different country. Darkstalkers also pulls their monsters from various mythologies and cryptids. And hey, I think that's cool. It helps the world feel bigger and interconnected, as opposed to everything interesting that ever occurs all somehow happening within just one small town. And I'm also just a fan of representation in general. In case you can't tell from my accent, I am very white. I used to not give a lot of thought to this sort of thing and figured it didn't really matter, but after finding out I'm autistic, my eyes were kind of open. I get excited whenever I find a character that's also autistic, or at least seems autistic. I'm probably projecting a lot, so I'm able to sympathize a bit. Video games are for everyone, so the more of that everyone that's included, the better. But it gets a little weird seeing this mentioned as part of the localization process. I've talked about the different Zero ships in the past, and while Zero and Iris was my number one, I also acknowledge that X and Zero was another popular one. If this happened sometime down the line, it wouldn't bother me, but I would be pretty ticked off if it turned out that they were only gay in the American version, because that's what Capcom figured we wanted, whereas the original Japanese just had them reaffirming their undying friendship and respect for each other. I'm a fan of diverse casts, but not of existing characters being changed to fit a perceived gap. That would be a pretty extreme example though, and I'd find it ironic if it did happen since this sort of thing normally is done in the reverse. I'm left thinking about the gay kisses removed for Chinese theaters, and glossing over cross-dressers. Looking at the specific language here, I have to figure that they're talking more about pronouns and not using certain words that aren't used anymore. For the first, I've streamed plenty of Pokemon games as a girl and no one's gotten hurt, and I've read enough that I understand a singular they, so I don't care. You do you. As for the latter, there have been plenty of words that you're just not supposed to use anymore, and I even recall one word that I would never say, but it's apparently part of the everyday vernacular in Australia. Crazy stuff. Might even avoid mentioning hamburgers in places that put a high value on cows. So while this point has the possibility for the wildest implementation, I see it more as just providing a few extra options that most people will probably just ignore, and avoiding stepping on any landmines. And if you're worried that the next Street Fighter is only going to include brown and queer people, your problem's probably going to be more with the base game than with the localization. Adapting humor and wit. Humor often relies on cultural references and wordplay, making it a challenging aspect of game localization. Translators must carefully navigate puns, jokes, and cultural references to maintain the intended comedic effect. This requires a deep understanding of the target audience's sense of humor, while staying true to the original wit. This one is kind of important, more so than people might think. There's this manga I read in Shonen Jump every week called Me and Roboco. It's a gag manga, so humor is pretty much the whole point. Some weeks, it gets a chuckle out of me. Some, I'm busting a gut. Other times, I've engaged with enough Japanese media that I get the joke, even if it doesn't really resonate with me. And others, it completely goes over my head. Like Japan, this is what you find funny? It is a Japanese magazine, so again, you do you, but it definitely limits its global popularity. And for Capcom, we go back to Ace Attorney again. The biggest element of this series is its storytelling, and you using your logic to solve a case. But humor also plays a very major part in it. If they just translated everything as is, a lot of people would probably find some of the dialogue odd and constantly feel like they're missing something. Because they would be. Without this aspect of localization, Ace Attorney would probably remain like me and Roboco. Popular enough in Japan, but incredibly niche everywhere else. I mean, no one besides me knows this manga, right? Consistency in terminology. Maintaining consistency in terminology is crucial for a smooth and coherent gaming experience. This applies not only to translating words, but also to ensuring that game mechanics, instructions, and lore are consistently represented across languages. Establishing a cohesive language system helps prevent confusion and enhances the overall gaming experience for players worldwide. Ah, so by this, do you mean me not fighting Vile 4 times, but going up against Baba once? Or Mavericks disappearing, only to be replaced with their regulars? Or them forgetting that they changed Gospel to Treble? I like consistency, and while 35 years ago this would have meant getting Rockman on the Famicom, today, it means not trying to swap back to Rockman to give him one singular global identity. If you did that, it would confuse some fans, upset others, and would probably pretty drastically decrease sales, though you would also probably make some Japanophiles very happy. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, and you can't takesy-backsy your changes from over 3 decades ago. We could also circle back to the Die Wily bit for the lore consistency point, since that completely changes the character, though I'm struggling a bit with the mechanics and instructions line. Are the face buttons maybe different in some territories and you need to make sure you change the A button to whatever other places use? Or is this about never disguising an easy mode as normal again? Either way, while I'm sure some people want bass to go back to Forte, I'm hoping this one isn't too contentious, given how long we put up with it thus far. Of course, there's one type of localization that really does bug me, that wasn't talked about here, and I don't think it's as much of a Capcom problem. Cut content. This can sometimes be an issue with Fire Emblem. Fates had a weird face-touching mini-game? I don't know what you'd call it, but it was cut from the American, maybe global release. It's weird, and I wouldn't use it unless it offered some sort of gameplay benefit, like raising your support, but you know what? You tell me that it's in one version of the game, but not in mine, and all of a sudden I'm mad. Let me decide whether or not I want to engage with something. Don't make that choice for me. Tokyo Mirage Sessions also had some of the spicier elements taken out, to make it more palatable for Western audiences, but the thing was, this was a Fire Emblem Persona mashup where most of the characters were idols. The only people playing this were weebs, the exact sort of folks who would have wanted this stuff. I know, I used to be one of them. I want the full experience, whether I engage with it or not, so cut content, be it due to localization or just saving it for DLC, is always going to be one of those things that get under my skin. So am I telling you not to be upset? No, not really. If you think that Capcom butchered Ace Attorney with how heavily they localized it, think some of the name changes are dumb, or wanted to learn the ins and outs of Japanese humor, you're well within your rights to be mad. If Capcom goes crazy with how much they change future translations, that's another thing you can complain about. I'd probably be pretty perturbed as well. And if you're worried that games are going to start putting together cast of characters with checklists, well, that'd be more an issue with the developers, not the localizers, unless they go mad with power. But if you're convinced that this is some drastic new course that Capcom's plotting, I don't think we've seen enough to indicate that. Yet. Who knows, maybe there's some major changes on the horizon, but this isn't one of the what-ifs that I'm willing to get mad about at least. I feel like I'm more likely to get turned off by some of Capcom's monetization practices, rather than localization, but I guess we'll see. Either way, that's my take. Maybe I calmed some people down, maybe I just stirred the pot. I am already too scared of the comment sections on this one to ask any pointed questions. So with that, thanks for watching, maybe consider subscribing if you're into platformers, especially Mega Man, and I'll see myself out. For everlasting peace, or something.